In a small-town firehouse, where the coffee's always stale and the equipment's seen better days, Mike Thompson works double shifts just to make ends meet. He's the kind of firefighter who runs into burning buildings while others run out. Not for glory, but because it's who he is. Yesterday was supposed to be like any other day until he pulled an unconscious woman from a blazing apartment complex. He didn't know she was someone important. He didn't know she had connections to the most powerful people in the country. He just knew someone needed help. Now, 14 black limousines are lined up outside his firehouse, and nothing in his 20 years of service could have prepared him for what's about to happen next. Will this humble firefighter's life ever be the same? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The old coffee maker sputtered and hissed, filling Station 42 with the familiar aroma of burnt beans and missed sleep. Mike Thompson lifted his helmet from its hook, running his thumb over the deep scratch above the brim. A souvenir from last month's warehouse fire. 20 years of service had left their mark on both the helmet and the man who wore it. "You're early again, Thompson," Captain Rodriguez called from his office. "Third time this week. Just catching up on equipment checks, Cap." Mike's standard response, delivered with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The truth sat heavily in his back pocket, a final notice from the bank about his mortgage payment. The station house came alive around him as the morning shift filtered in. Jake Martinez, fresh out of the academy, bounded through the door with the energy of youth and inexperience. "Morning, old-timer. Ready for another thrilling day of cat rescues?" Mike tossed him a cleaning rag. "Start with the trucks, rookie. They don't polish themselves." Through the garage windows, dawn painted the sky in shades of promise. Mike watched the neighborhood wake up as he methodically checked his gear. Mrs. Chen opening her corner store, Mr. Patterson walking his ancient golden retriever, kids trudging to school with backpacks that seemed too heavy for their small frames. This was his world. Simple, predictable, held together by routine and responsibility. The same streets he'd grown up on, now under his protection. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister. "Mom asking about dinner Sunday. You coming this time?" He tucked the phone away without responding. Another missed family dinner looming. The overtime paid better than explanations about why he couldn't help with Mom's medical bills this month. "Thompson!" Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through his thoughts. "Your gear inspection report from yesterday. You noted the backup respirator needs maintenance?" "Yes, sir. Pressure gauge is reading low. I can stay late, fix it myself." "Like you did with the thermal imaging." "Camera last week?" "And the hydraulic spreaders before that." The captain's expression softened. "Mike, you're the best firefighter I've got, but you can't keep carrying the whole station on your shoulders." Before Mike could respond, the station's alarm system screamed to life. His body moved on autopilot, helmet on, gear up, muscle memory built over thousands of similar moments. As he swung into the truck, Jake scrambled in beside him, earlier bravado replaced by focused determination. The radio crackled with details: structure fire, possible entrapment, 3 minutes out. Mike closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself as the siren's wail parted traffic ahead. This was where everything made sense. No bills, no worries, no complications. Just the next call, the next person who needed help. His helmet, scratched and scarred but still strong, caught the morning light as they rounded the final corner. Ahead, smoke curled against the sky like a dark promise. Another day at Station 42 was about to become anything but ordinary. Through the truck's window, Mike caught a glimpse of his reflection in a storefront, a man marked by time and service, chosen by circumstance and dedication. The weight of his gear felt like armor, the burden of responsibility like an old friend. "Hey, Thompson." Jake's voice was quiet beside him. "How do you do it? Stay so calm before we go in?" Mike adjusted his helmet, its familiar weight settling just right. Because someone's waiting for us to show up, kid, and showing up is what we do. The truck slowed as they approached the scene. Mike could already feel the heat of the fire, could read the signs of what waited inside. His hand found the worn edge of his helmet's brim, a gesture repeated countless times over 20 years of service. What no one at Station 42 knew, what Mike himself was only beginning to understand, was that this ordinary morning would be his last. Tomorrow, those 14 limousines would change everything. But for now, there was only the fire ahead, the team beside him, and the job that had defined his life for 2 decades. "Ready up," he called to Jake, checking the rookie's gear one last time. "Time to go to work." Heat rippled through the air as Engine 42 pulled up to the Oakwood apartments. Flames already licked the third-floor windows, hungry fingers reaching for the roof. Residents huddled on the lawn in various states of dress, some clutching pets, others just clutching each other. "Thompson, Martinez, take the east stairwell." Captain Rodriguez's commands cut through the chaos. "Reports of someone still in 3C. Mike's gloved hand grabbed the thermal imaging camera. "Stay on my 6, he told Jake, checking the rookie's mask seal one last time. They pushed through the building's front entrance, where smoke hung thick as fog. The stairwell was still clear enough to navigate, though the heat intensified with each step. At the 3rd floor, Mike pressed his hand against the door, hot but not compromised. He nodded to Jake and pushed through. The hallway was another world. Smoke rolled across the ceiling in dark waves, and the heat pressed against them like a living thing. Their boots crunched over debris as they moved toward 3C, testing each step. The apartment's door handle glowed orange in the thermal camera's display. Mike wrapped his gloved hand around it, feeling the intense heat even through his protective gear. The door was locked. "Halligan!" he called, and Jake passed him the tool. One swift strike near the handle, and the door gave way. A wall of heat, and smoke rushed out. Mike dropped low, scanning with the thermal camera. The apartment's layout was standard: living room, kitchen to the right, bedroom and bath down a short hall. "Fire department, call out!" Mike's voice boomed through his mask. Only the crackle of flames answered. They pushed forward, checking each room methodically. The living room was clear. The kitchen. A crash from above made them both look up. Part of the ceiling had begun to sag. "Thompson status report." The captain's voice crackled through their radios. "First room's clear, moving to—" Mike stopped as the thermal camera picked up something in the hallway. A heat signature, different from the surrounding fire. "Got something! Bedroom!" They found her collapsed halfway between the bedroom and bathroom. The thermal camera showed she was still generating body heat, still alive. "Martinez, radio it in. I'm getting her out." Mike handed off the camera and bent to lift the unconscious woman. She was small, dressed in silk pajamas, now stained with soot. Another crash, closer this time. The ceiling was going. "Thompson, get out now. Floor's compromised." The captain's voice held an edge of urgency Mike had rarely heard. Mike adjusted, his grip on the woman, turning back toward the door. The hallway that had been passable moments ago was now a gauntlet of falling debris and intensifying flames. "Stay behind me," he told Jake. "Match my steps exactly." They moved as one unit, Mike carrying their victim, Jake watching their 6. The heat was becoming unbearable, their gear approaching its limits. Halfway down the hall, Mike heard it, the distinctive groan of structural failure. He had half a second to decide. "Martinez, back, now!" Mike lunged forward as a section of ceiling collapsed where they'd been standing, cutting off Jake's path. Through the flames, he saw the rookie's mask, eyes wide with fear. "Thompson!" Jake's voice crackled through the radio. "East window. Go back, take the fire escape. I'll meet you at the truck. No time to wait for acknowledgement." The woman in his arms was limp, running out of time. Mike pressed forward, each step a decision between varying degrees of danger. The front door was still visible through the smoke, its handle now completely blackened by heat. Mike wrapped his body around the victim, protecting her as best he could, and charged the last few yards. They burst into the stairwell like divers surfacing for air. Mike didn't stop, taking the stairs two at a time, his muscles screaming under the combined weight of his gear and the unconscious woman. He exploded out of the building's entrance, just as a second explosion rocked the third floor. Paramedics swarmed him immediately, taking the woman onto a waiting gurney. Mike watched them work through the fog of exhaustion and adrenaline. "Thompson!" Jake appeared beside him, mask off, face streaked with soot and tears. "I thought, when?" "The ceiling. You did good, kid." Mike pulled off his own mask, sucking in fresh air. "You did exactly right." The woman was already being loaded into an ambulance, oxygen mask in place, vital signs being monitored. Just another rescue, Mike thought. Just another day. He had no way of knowing that the blackened door handle he'd gripped in 3C would become a piece of history, preserved and eventually displayed in a museum exhibit about everyday heroes. No way of knowing that the split-second decision to push forward instead of back would change not just his life, but the lives of firefighters across the country. For now, he simply watched the ambulance pull away, its sirens fading into the morning. Traffic. Tomorrow would bring its own surprises. Tonight there was only the satisfaction of a life saved and the promise of a hot shower back at the station. "Coming in for debrief?" Jake asked. Mike nodded, running a hand over his soot-stained helmet. "Yeah, kid, right behind you." Mike's ancient pickup truck rounded the corner to Station 42 at exactly 5:45 a.m., just like every other morning. The first hints of dawn were barely touching the sky, and his muscles still ached from yesterday's rescue. He almost missed the first limousine, its black surface blending with the pre-dawn shadows, but he couldn't miss the other 13. They lined both sides of the street, their polished surfaces reflecting the streetlights like black mirrors. Each bore different license plates, some from as far as California and New York. Camera crews huddled in clusters, their equipment creating islands of light in the dim morning. Mike pulled into his usual spot behind the station, mind racing. Through the back door, he could hear unusual activity, multiple voices, the clink of coffee cups, phones ringing. "Thompson!" Jake burst through the door, eyes wide. "Man, you're not gonna believe—" He stopped, taking in Mike's confused expression. "You haven't seen it yet, have you?" He thrust a newspaper into Mike's hands. The headline sprawled across the front page. "Local hero saves tech billionaire's sister." Below it, a photo taken moments after the rescue. Mike carrying the unconscious. Woman from the building, flames framing the doorway behind them. "That's Alexandra Chen," Jake said, practically bouncing. "The woman you saved. She's James Chen's sister, you know, the guy who invented that social media app everyone uses. The whole family's inside, and there's reporters, and I think I saw a senator." "Oh, hold up." Mike raised a hand, still staring at the newspaper. "Chen, the tech giant, worth something like 50 billion, Jake nodded. "And his sister runs their charitable foundation. She's been working undercover, living in different cities, experiencing how regular people live, some kind of research for their next big initiative." The station's back door opened again. Captain Rodriguez stepped out, looking both proud and slightly overwhelmed. "Thompson, they're waiting for you." Mike glanced down at his worn uniform, the coffee stain on his sleeve from yesterday still visible. "Cap, I'm not—" "You are." Rodriguez's voice was firm but kind. "Sometimes life hands you a moment, Mike. This is yours." Inside, the station's common room had transformed. Designer suits mingled with dress uniforms. Cameras tracked every movement. At the center of it all stood a petite woman in an elegant pantsuit, the same woman he'd carried from the flames, though now she looked more like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Alexandra Chen's face lit up when she saw him. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, stopping directly in front of Mike. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet room, "I've been waiting to thank you properly." Mike shifted uncomfortably. "Just doing my job, Mom." That's exactly why I'm here. She smiled, and there was something in her expression that went beyond mere gratitude. You see, I've spent the past year living in different communities, trying to understand what makes them work, what holds them together. And do you know what I've found? Mike shook his head, acutely aware of every camera focused on them. Heroes, Alexandra said simply. Not the kind in movies or comic books, real heroes, like you. People who risk everything not for glory or reward, but because it's right, because someone needs help. She gestured to the crowd. That's why all these people are here. My brother's foundation is launching a new initiative, identifying and supporting everyday heroes across the country. And you, Mr. Thompson, are going to help us tell their stories. Mike's throat felt dry. I'm not sure I understand. We want to make you the face of our campaign. A tall man in an impeccable suit stepped forward, James Chen himself. Your story, your dedication, your character, that's what we want to celebrate, to show people what real heroism looks like. Through the station's windows, Mike could see more news vans arriving. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably his sister, maybe. His mother wondering what was happening. The weight of all these expectations, these opportunities, pressed against him like smoke in a burning building. Take some time, Alexandra said gently, reading his expression. Think about it. But know this, what you did yesterday, it wasn't just saving my life. It was showing us exactly the kind of hero this world needs. Mike's hand found the edge of his badge, a gesture of grounding he'd developed over years of service. In the corner, Jake watched with unconcealed awe. Captain Rodriguez stood straight and proud, and somewhere in the crowd, a camera shutter clicked, capturing the moment a simple firefighter's life changed forever. The station's conference room had never felt smaller. Mike sat at the familiar scratch table, now surrounded by people whose watches probably cost more than his yearly salary. Alexandra Chen perched elegantly in the chair across from him, sliding. A golden business card across the table's scarred surface. The Chen Foundation for Social Innovation. Mike read aloud, the embossed letters catching the fluorescent light. We've been planning this initiative for 2 years, Alexandra explained, her fingers absently touching the oxygen monitor still clipped to her wrist. A reminder of yesterday's rescue. Living in different communities, identifying the invisible, the threads that hold society together. James Chen stood by the window, his tailored suit incongruous against the backdrop of fire trucks. What my sister found, he said, turning to face the room, was that in every community there are people like you, Mr. Thompson, people who serve without recognition, who sacrifice without reward. A sleek laptop appeared in front of Mike. On the screen, images scrolled past. A school teacher buying supplies for her students, a diner owner feeding homeless veterans, a retired mechanic fixing cars for single mothers, all free of charge. Heroes hiding in plain sight, Alexandra leaned forward. We want to tell their stories, but more than that, we want to give them the resources to expand their impact. Mike's eyes caught on the number at the bottom of the presentation. He blinked, certain he'd misread it. $5 million, James confirmed, per recipient, unrestricted funds to use as they see fit, whether for their community work or their personal needs. A wave of dizziness washed over Mike. That kind of money could fix the station's aging equipment, set up a fund for firefighters' families, pay off his mother's medical bills. But why me? He managed. Alexandra smiled, touching her throat where smoke inhalation had left its mark. Because you didn't hesitate. Running into that fire, you had no idea who I was. I could have been anyone, homeless, elderly, a criminal. It didn't matter to you. That's just being a firefighter, Mike protested. Exactly. James stepped closer. That's what makes you perfect for this. You don't see yourself as extraordinary, even though you are. Do you know what the thermal imaging showed about that hallway after you got out? The floor collapsed completely 30 seconds later. Mike remembered the heat, the groaning timbers. Standard risk assessment, he would have said. Just the job. Woman in a crisp business suit, introduced earlier as the Foundation's PR director, spread photographs across the table. Mike in action at various fires over the years, compiled from news archives and department records. His whole career laid out in frozen moments of service. "We've done our research," Alexandra said softly. 20 years of service, multiple commendations, 3 serious injuries in the line of duty, 67 confirmed saves, and not a single interview or public recognition requested. "The department gives out medals," Mike shrugged. "They go in a drawer. The job's not about that, which is precisely why it needs to be about that," James interjected. "Society celebrates athletes, actors, social media influencers. We want to redirect that spotlight to the real heroes. Show young people that true worth isn't measured in followers or fame, but in service to others." Alexandra reached into her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. The initial contract. Full creative control over your story. A seat on the Foundation's board. And of course the $5 million grant. Mike's hand rested on the golden business. In card, its weight somehow heavier than it should be. Through the conference room's windows, he could see Jake giving a tour to some reporters, gesturing animatedly toward the fire trucks. "There's no pressure to decide immediately," Alexandra assured him. "Take the weekend, talk to your family, but know this." She touched his arm gently. "Whatever you choose, my gratitude isn't conditional. You saved my life. That means something, regardless of contracts or campaigns." Mike nodded, his throat tight. Captain Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, a mix of pride and concern on his weathered face. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but the mayor's here. And Channel 7 wants a live interview for the evening news." Mike stood, straightening his uniform automatically. The golden business card slipped into his pocket like a key to another world, a world of boardrooms and benefits, of influence and opportunity, a world as far from his everyday life as earth from sky. "I'll think about it," he promised Alexandra. She smiled, understanding in her eyes. "That's all we ask. Well, that and maybe a smile for the cameras. Your story's already trending nationwide." Mike suppressed a groan. Somewhere in the station, he could hear his fellow firefighters laughing, probably at the social media posts. Already circulating, his simple life of service was evaporating like morning dew, replaced by something both terrifying and filled with possibility. The golden card seemed to pulse in his pocket, a constant reminder that sometimes the biggest fires aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones that transform everything they touch, leaving nothing unchanged in their wake. "Just relax and be yourself," the stylist said, tugging at the sleeves of Mike's new suit. "But maybe don't cross your arms, or stand like that. And try to smile more, but naturally." Mike caught his reflection in the green room mirror. The charcoal, grey Tom Ford suit felt like a costume, the Italian leather shoes like props in a play he hadn't rehearsed for. His own dress uniform hung forgotten on a rack nearby, suddenly looking shabby in comparison. 2 minutes to air. A production assistant called through the door. The TV studio had been transformed for this exclusive interview. Fire department memorabilia decorated the set, and a massive screen showed footage from yesterday's rescue on loop. Mike watched his recorded self emerge from the burning building again and again, carrying Alexandra to safety. "Remember," the Chen Foundation's PR director hovered nearby, "focus on the human element, your dedication to service, the importance of community heroes, and try to work in the hashtag Everyday Heroes." Mike nodded, tugging at his collar. The suit was perfectly tailored, but felt like it was choking him. His phone buzzed. Another text from his sister. "Mom's watching. Whole neighborhood's having a viewing party at O'Malley's bar." 60 seconds. Alexandra appeared beside him, elegant as ever in a designer dress. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Mike admitted. "Give me a 5-alarm fire any day." She squeezed his arm. "Just pretend you're talking to me. Forget the cameras. Forget the audience. Tell them what you told me about why you became a firefighter. The makeup artist rushed in for final touches, powdering away nervous sweat. Mike's mind drifted to his locker at the station, where his worn uniform waited. The contrast between that life and this moment felt impossibly wide. And we're live in 5, 4, 3. The interview started smoothly enough. The host was professional, asking about the rescue, praising Mike's bravery. But then came the personal questions. Sources say you've been struggling financially, working double shifts to make ends meet. How does it feel knowing you've potentially saved one of America's wealthiest families? Mike shifted in his seat, the expensive suit suddenly feeling like armor. Wealth wasn't a factor, Mom. In a fire, everyone's the same. Everyone deserves to be saved. The host leaned forward, scenting a story. But surely now, with the Chen Foundation's offer, the Foundation's initiative, Mike cut in, remembering, his briefing is about recognizing all everyday heroes. Teachers, nurses, community volunteers. Speaking of recognition, the host pressed, your social media following has exploded overnight. How are you handling sudden fame? Mike thought of the hundreds of notifications on his phone, the reporters, camped outside his apartment, the interview requests flooding the station. It's an adjustment. Alexandra smoothly intervened, steering the conversation back to the Foundation's mission. Mike fell silent, watching her expertly handle the host's questions. She made it look effortless, this world of cameras and carefully crafted messages. After the interview back in the green room, Mike carefully hung up the designer suit. His reflection watched him, a stranger in borrowed finery, trying to bridge two worlds. You did great, Alexandra said from the doorway. The authenticity came through. That's what people connect with. Authenticity, Mike laughed softly. In this suit. She stepped closer, studying him. The suit doesn't change who you are, Mike. It's just expanding your toolkit, like adding a new piece of equipment to your fire gear. But it wasn't the same, and they both knew it. His firefighting equipment was functional, purposeful. This, the suit, the makeup, the careful messaging, felt like artifice. There's a benefit dinner tomorrow night, Alexandra continued. Major donors, influential supporters. The Foundation's having another suit delivered to your apartment. Mike nodded, already dreading it. More cameras, more questions, more performance. Just remember, she touched his arm gently. You're not just representing yourself anymore. You're representing every firefighter, every first responder, every person who serves without recognition. Sometimes a suit isn't just a suit. It's a bridge between worlds. As Mike changed back into his civilian clothes, his phone buzzed with a text from Jake. You looked uncomfortable as hell, boss, but you made us proud. Maybe that was enough, Mike thought. Maybe being uncomfortable was part of the process. After, all discomfort was familiar territory for any firefighter. You just pushed through it and did the job. He folded the designer suit with careful hands, this strange new tool in an expanding arsenal. Tomorrow would bring another performance, another test. But for now he had a shift at the station where the uniform still fit and the role was clear. The world might be changing around him, but some things, like the weight of responsibility and the call to serve, remained constant, designer suit or not. Mike stared at the two phones on his nightstand, his old flip phone, scarred and reliable, and the sleek new iPhone the Foundation had provided. The old one showed 3 missed calls from his mother. The new one displayed 67 notifications from social media accounts he hadn't even known existed a week ago. Your public profile needs constant maintenance, the PR team had explained, handing him the iPhone. We'll handle most of it, but you need to be accessible. The morning sun crept through his apartment window, highlighting the contrast between his worlds. A pile of designer clothes from yesterday's photo shoot lay draped over his worn recliner. His firefighter's helmet sat on the coffee table beside a glossy marketing proposal. His old phone buzzed again. His mother. Hey, Mom! Michael James Thompson? Why aren't you answering your phone? I had to hear from Mrs. Peterson at church that You're going to be on Good Morning America. Mike pinched the bridge of his nose. Sorry, Mom. It's been crazy. And this magazine says you're getting $5 million. Are you really going to keep working at the station? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. He looked at his uniform, pressed and ready for today's shift. Of course I am. The foundation money, if I accept it. That's for a text alert chimed on the new phone. The foundation's PR director. GMA segment moved up, car arriving in 20 minutes. Mom, I have to go. I'll explain everything Sunday at dinner. That's what you said last week and the week before. Michael, I'm worried about another chime. Car arriving early. Be ready in 10. I'm sorry, Mom. I really have to go. Love you. He ended the call, guilt settling heavy in his stomach. The new phone kept buzzing. Instagram notifications, Twitter mentions, email alerts. His follow account had exploded overnight after the first TV appearance. People were calling him America's favorite firefighter, creating memes with his quotes, starting fan clubs. A knock at his door. He opened it to find Jake, still in uniform from the night shift. Thought you might need this. Jake held up a coffee and a paper bag. Real breakfast? Before they stuff you with that TV studio fancy crap. Mike accepted the offering gratefully. You're a lifesaver. That's your job, remember? Jake stepped inside, taking in the chaos of Mike's apartment. Speaking of which, you're still on for the Anderson Elementary demonstration next week, right? Kids are counting on it. Mike's stomach tightened. The new phone chimed again. A calendar alert for a foundation board meeting scheduled for the same day. I'll make it work, he said. But even he heard the uncertainty in his voice. Jake picked up the new phone, whistling at the stream of notifications. Man, you're like a celebrity now. Must be wild. It's temporary, Mike said more to himself than Jake. Once they find their next story, it'll die down. But they both knew that wasn't true. The Foundation's campaign was just beginning. Alexandra had shown him the rollout plan. 9 months of events, interviews, appearances. His story was meant to launch a national movement. The old phone buzzed. One final time, a text from his sister. Mom's crying, fix it. A car horn sounded outside. His ride to the TV studio. Jake handed him the coffee with a knowing look. You know what Cap always says. You can't fight every fire at once. Sometimes you have to choose which one needs you most. Mike grabbed his jacket, both phones weighing down his pockets like stones. What if they all do? Jake shrugged. Then you remember why you became a firefighter in the first place. Everything else is just smoke. The car horn sounded again, more insistent this time. Mike headed for the door, the phones beating a contradictory rhythm against his legs with each step. Thompson, Jake called after him. We've got a spot open on B shift tonight, if you need to remember who you are. Mike nodded, grateful for the offer and the understanding behind it. 2 phones, 2 worlds, 2 versions of himself emerging. The question wasn't which one was real anymore, it was which one he could live with being. The Chen Foundation's boardroom occupied the entire top floor of a downtown skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, including, Mike noticed with a pang, the distant outline of Station 42. The leather chair beneath him probably cost more than his monthly salary. These are unprecedented numbers, the Foundation's marketing director was saying, clicking through slides. Social media engagement up 800% since Mike's Good Morning America appearance. The Sakesh Everyday Heroes hashtag is trending in 12 countries. Alexandra sat at the head of the table, her expression thoughtful. James Chen participated via video conference from Silicon Valley, his massive screen dominating one wall. Which brings us to Phase 2. The director continued, distributing thick blue folders to everyone present. Expanded partnerships, speaking, engagements, brand ambassadorships. Mike opened his folder. The numbers made his head spin. 7 figures just for endorsing a sports drink. Another for a book deal. A national speaking tour at $50,000 per appearance. We've had interest from major athletic wear companies, the director added. They want to launch a line of workout gear under your name, Hero Training or something similar. The demographic appeal is incredible, everyone from kids to seniors. Connects with your story. James Chen's voice filled the room. What do you think, Mike? Mike stared at a mock-up of himself on workout gear packaging, his photo digitally enhanced to look more heroic. I'm not sure this is what I signed up for. You signed up to make a difference, Alexandra reminded him gently. These partnerships would fund firefighter training programs nationwide, equipment upgrades for underfunded stations, support for first responders' families. She wasn't wrong. The potential impact was staggering. One sports drink contract could fund Station 42's equipment needs for a decade. There's more, the director said, reaching for another folder, this one in deep red leather. Netflix is interested. A documentary series following you and other. Everyday heroes. They're offering... The number she named made Mike's coffee turn sour in his stomach. Full creative control, of course, James added quickly. We protect the integrity of the message. This isn't about exploitation. It's about inspiration. Mike's phone buzzed, his old one, the one he still kept for family and the station. A text from Captain Rodriguez. Need you back. Martinez caught flu, B shift short-staffed. I have to think about it, Mike said, standing abruptly. My shift, Mike. Alexandra's voice was kind but firm. You haven't worked a regular shift in 2 weeks. Maybe it's time to consider what? The words came out sharper than he intended. Quitting? Becoming a full-time celebrity? The marketing team shifted uncomfortably. Even James's massive video presence seemed to dim slightly. Alexandra stood, gesturing for Mike to follow her to the window. Below them, the city stretched out like a promise. Look there! She pointed to a school playground. Every kid down there could grow up wanting to be a firefighter instead of a social media star. Look there! She pointed to a homeless shelter. The Foundation's resources could triple their capacity. She turned to face him. You're not just a firefighter anymore, Mike. You're a symbol, a chance to reshape what society values. I'm not qualified for any of this, Mike protested. I just do my job. That's exactly why you're qualified. She picked up the red folder. You know what the Netflix producers said? They've never seen anyone poll higher across all demographics. People trust you. They believe in you. Do you know how rare that is? Mike's phone buzzed again. Captain Rodriguez. No pressure, but you're missed here. Alexandra watched him check the message. The station will always be there. But this opportunity, this chance to effect real change, that's once in a lifetime. She pressed the red folder into his hands. Take it home. Read it carefully. Talk to your family. But remember, sometimes the greatest service we can offer isn't running into a single burning building. Sometimes it's changing the whole system. Mike's fingers traced the folder's expensive leather. Inside lay enough money to secure his family's future, fund his mother's medical care, revolutionize firefighter support services across the country. Everything he'd ever wanted to fix, wrapped in a neat corporate package. So why did it feel like he was standing in a burning building, watching the exit slowly disappear? I'll think about it, he said finally, tucking the folder under his arm. Alexandra nodded, understanding in her eyes. That's all we ask. But Mike, the world needs heroes it can believe in, now more than ever. As the elevator descended from the boardroom, Mike held 2 folders and 2 phones, each weighted with different kinds of responsibility. In his mind, he could hear the station's alarm bells ringing, but for the first time in his career, he wasn't sure which fire he was supposed to fight. America's hottest hero, the secret past of firefighter Mike Thompson, screamed the tabloid headline. Mike stared at his own face on the glossy cover, a photo clearly taken without his knowledge as he left his apartment building. Below it, smaller, headlines promised, exclusive ex-girlfriend tells all, and the dark truth behind his mother's illness. Don't read that trash, Alexandra said, trying to take the magazine from his hands in the Foundation's office, but Mike had already flipped to the article. Sources close to Thompson reveal a troubled childhood marked by his father's abandonment. He felt sick. How did they... I'm so sorry, Mike. We're already pursuing legal action, but They interviewed my high school girlfriend. About my dad? His hands shook. They went to my mother's nursing home. The magazine thudded against the wall as he threw it, pages fluttering like wounded birds. His phone, the new one, buzzed constantly with notifications as the story spread. Online, we can get ahead of this, the PR director said, rushing in. Release a statement, control the narrative. Control. Mike laughed bitterly. They're camped outside my mother's room, taking photos through her window. She has dementia. She doesn't understand why strangers are calling out questions about Dad. Alexandra touched his arm. Let us handle it. We have experience with... Experience? He pulled away. With what? With people digging up every painful moment of your life for entertainment? With strangers deciding they own your story? His old phone buzzed. Jake. You see the news? Channel 5's at the station. They're interviewing everyone about you. Mike sank into a chair, the weight of it all pressing down like smoke in his lungs. Just yesterday, he'd visited a children's hospital as part of the Foundation's campaign. The kids' faces had lit up, calling him a real-life superhero. Now this, it's not just me anymore, he said quietly. They're dragging everyone in. The guys at the station. My family, even my dad, wherever he is. The PR director cleared her throat. Actually, we've had requests from several networks for a reunion story. If we could locate your father, get out. Mike's voice was deadly calm. Now. When they were alone, Alexandra sat beside him. Fame is a magnifying glass, Mike. It makes everything bigger, the good and the bad. I never wanted to be famous. He pulled out his wallet, extracting a worn photo. This was my mum before the dementia, at my academy graduation. She was so proud that day, said I was just like my grandfather. He was a firefighter too. Alexandra studied the photo. She's beautiful. She can't handle reporters shoving cameras in her face. She gets confused, agitated. The nursing home called. They're hiring extra security, but they're not equipped for this kind of attention. His old phone buzzed again. Captain Rodriguez. Media circus here. Taking time away from actual work. Need a decision on your status. Soon, I can move your mother to a private facility, Alexandra offered. The best care, complete privacy. The Foundation will cover everything. Mike looked at her sharply. More money to solve problems created by money? Sometimes protection requires resources, she said gently. It doesn't make you less authentic to accept help. The magazine lay scattered on the floor, his life reduced to sensational headlines and grainy photos. On the cover, his candid expression looked haunted, hunted. There was this fire once, he said slowly. Apartment building. Found a teenage girl hiding in her closet. She was more scared of being seen in her pajamas than of the flames. I gave her my coat, covered her face while we walked out. Everyone has something they want to keep private. He stood, gathering the magazine pages. His own face stared back at him from every angle. My mum used to tell this story about my grandfather. During a big factory fire, a newspaper photographer got too close to the scene. Grandpa grabbed his camera, said, "You want pictures? Go shoot the sunset." Back then, that was enough. Alexandra watched him collect every page, every piece of his exposed life. We can't put this genie back in the bottle, Mike, but we can channel it, use it for good. His phones lay on the desk, one buzzing with media requests, the other with messages. From people who knew the real him, both now seemed like harbingers of chaos rather than tools of connection. I need time, he said finally. Need to make sure Mum's okay. Need to talk to the guys at the station. Of course. Alexandra stood. Take all the time you need. But they both knew time was the one thing he couldn't control anymore. Like a fire fed by pure oxygen, fame had its own hunger, its own momentum, and it was consuming everything in its path. The crystal firefighter trophy lay shattered on Mike's apartment floor, knocked from its shelf during his hasty grab for the remote. On TV, the news anchor's voice filled the room. Breaking news in the Mike Thompson story. Questions arise about The hero firefighters passed as new footage surfaces from a controversial rescue attempt 3 years ago. The grainy security camera video played, a burning warehouse, Mike and his team at the entrance. His own voice crackling through radio static. "Too unstable. Everyone out. That's an order." The anchor reappeared. 2 people died in that fire. Sources now question whether Thompson's caution cost lives. Social media erupts with hashtag "Would not my hero." Mike's new phone exploded with notifications. The Foundation's PR team was calling, texting, demanding an emergency meeting. His old phone buzzed too. "Captain Rodriguez, you watching this?" The captain asked. "Yeah." Mike's voice was hollow. "You made the right call that night. We all knew it then. We know it now." But the media was already spinning a different story. Experts questioning his judgment. Armchair critics analyzing every frame of footage. Even photos of the victims' families, their grief weaponized for ratings. A knock at his door. Alexandra burst in without waiting for an answer, her usual composure fractured. "We need to get ahead of this," she said, then noticed the broken trophy. "What happened?" "Life," Mike gestured at the TV. "Reality, take your pick." The trophy had been his first commendation, awarded 10 years ago. Now it lay broken, like everything else. "The Foundation's board is meeting in an hour," Alexandra said. "We need to craft a response, show the full context of that night." "You mean spin it?" Mike's laugh was bitter. "Create a better story than cautious firefighter lets people die." "That's not what happened, and you know it." She stepped closer. "Tell me what really happened that night." Mike closed his eyes, seeing flames. Textile warehouse, chemical storage in the basement, 2 night security guards trapped inside. "We did a structural assessment. Building was already compromised. And send in a team. We risk 4 lives to maybe save 2. Building collapses, we lose everyone. I made the call. To save your team, to follow protocol." His fist hit the wall. "But that doesn't make for exciting television, does it? Hero, firefighter plays it safe, isn't a sexy headline." His new phone kept buzzing. Social media was exploding, old posts being scrutinized, previous interviews dissected. The perfect hero narrative was cracking, and everyone wanted to watch it fall. "The victims' families," Alexandra said quietly. "Would they speak for you?" Mike picked up a piece of the broken trophy. "I visit their graves every year, leave flowers. Never told anyone. Didn't want it to seem like I was trying to earn forgiveness." A new alert. Someone had dug up the official investigation report. Thompson's decision, while difficult, aligned with department safety protocols. But context didn't matter anymore. The narrative had shifted. America's hero had feet of clay, and that was the only story people wanted now. "Cancel the board meeting," Mike said suddenly. "What? No, we need to what? Protect the brand, salvage the campaign." He gestured to the broken trophy. This was real. That night was real. Those deaths were real. I won't turn them into a PR strategy. His old phone buzzed again. "Jake, whole station's behind you, boss. Just say the word." Alexandra watched him read the message. "The Foundation can weather this. We have resources, influence. We can show people the truth." "Whose truth?" Mike looked at her. "The real story or the one that sells better?" He picked up another piece of the trophy. The crystal caught the TV's light, refracting images of talking heads debating his character. "You know what I remember most about that night?" His voice was quiet. "Not the flames, not the decision. I remember sitting in my car after, writing condolence letters to their families, trying to explain how following protocol, doing everything right, still ended with their loved ones gone." He placed the broken pieces on his coffee table. "Maybe this is better. Maybe people need to see that sometimes there are no good choices. That being a hero doesn't mean you always win. The Foundation's mission," Alexandra started, "is bigger than me." Mike straightened. "Find another face for the campaign. Someone without my baggage. You're running away." "No." He looked at the TV where his face was still splashed across the screen. I'm going back to work, to the real work, where success isn't measured in hashtags and approval ratings. His old phone buzzed one final time. Captain Rodriguez. B shift starts in an hour. Your gear's still in your locker. Mike picked up his badge from the table. Sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is admit you're just human. The broken trophy caught the light again, its fractured surface reflecting 1,000 different versions of the truth. Just like fame itself, bright, sharp, and ultimately fragile. The nursing home's visitor parking lot was mercifully empty of news vans. Mike found his mother in the facility's garden, seated in her favorite spot by the bird feeders. She was holding an old photo album, one he recognized from his childhood. Home. Michael? Her voice held that familiar mix of recognition and uncertainty. I was just looking at your grandfather. He sat beside her, his firefighter's uniform feeling right for the first time in weeks. The album lay open to a yellowed photograph, his grandfather in his dress uniform, standing proud beside his fire truck in 1962. You look just like him now, his mother said, touching the photo gently. He never cared for attention either. Remember the story about the Christmas fire? Mike nodded. Though he wasn't sure if she was actually remembering or creating a new reality, her dementia made such distinctions difficult. But then she turned the page, and there was the newspaper clipping his grandmother had saved. Local. Hero refuses award, his mother read clearly. Firefighter James Thompson declined the mayor's citation yesterday, stating only that saving the children from the Parker Street fire was reward enough. She looked at Mike. And for a moment, her eyes were sharp, present. They're saying terrible things about you on the television. You've been watching the news. Mike's throat tightened. The nurses tried to keep it off, but she patted his hand. Your grandfather had critics too, you know. After the factory fire, when he wouldn't let his men go back in. Mike stared at her. This was a story he'd never heard, even in her clearer days. 7 people, she continued, her voice distant but certain. They said he could have saved them if he'd tried. But he knew the building was about to collapse. Saved his whole crew by holding them back. She turned another page. There was his grandfather again, older now, teaching a young Mike how to hold a fire hose. His mother's handwriting beneath, like grandfather, like grandson, summer 1990. Did it? Mike hesitated. Did it bother him, what people said? Oh, it ate at him. She closed the album, holding it tight. But he used to say, the fire doesn't care what people think. It'll kill you just the same. A cardinal landed on the nearby feeder, bright red against the grey morning. His mother smiled at it, then looked at Mike with sudden clarity. You're not your grandfather, Michael, and you're not what those TV people say either. You're my boy who used to rescue baby birds and never learned to walk past someone who needed help. She opened the album again, this time to a family photo from his academy graduation. His mother stood beaming beside him, his sister making bunny ears behind his head. Before the dementia, before the fame, before everything got so complicated. I'm sorry, he said softly, about the reporters bothering you. Pfft, she waved a hand. The nurses chased them away. Very entertaining, actually. That nice lady from the foundation offered to move me to a fancier place, but I told her I like my birds here. Mike blinked. Alexandra came to see you? Lovely girl. Brought me these albums from the house. She patted the book. Said you might. Need reminding of who you are. A blue jay joined the cardinal, the 2 birds sharing the feeder without fuss. His mother had always said there was a lesson in how different birds could share the same space. I don't know who I am anymore, Mom. The admission felt like letting go of a weight he'd carried too long. Everything's so complicated. She smiled. Your grandfather used to say being a firefighter was simple, not easy but simple. You go where you're needed. You help who you can. You accept that sometimes your best isn't enough. She turned to the last page of the album. There was his grandfather's funeral, the fire truck draped in black, the community lined up to pay respects. No cameras that day, his mother said. No speeches, just people whose lives he'd touched, standing silent in the rain. Mike touched the photo, understanding something finally. That's real legacy, isn't it? More real than any television show. She closed the album gently. Now, are you staying for lunch? The mystery meat surprise is actually quite mysterious today. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. Yeah, Mom, I'm staying. They sat together watching the birds, the photo album between them like a bridge, connecting past and present. His phone stayed silent in his pockets, and for a while, the world with all its complications felt blessedly far away. Michael, his mother's voice was soft. Whatever you decide to do, just make sure it's something you can tell me about on days when I remember to ask. The wisdom of it, simple, profound, and completely clear, settled over him like a familiar blanket. Sometimes you had to come home to remember which way was forward. Back to being who I've always been, he corrected gently. A firefighter who sometimes saves people, sometimes can't, but always shows up to try. He stood, walking to his uniform. His fingers traced the badge, worn smooth by years of service. The money would have helped, sure, but there's something more valuable than money, being able to look in the mirror and recognize yourself. Alexandra took the letter he offered her, not yet looking at which one it was. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice, even if it's not the one we hoped for. Thank you, Mike said, for everything, for showing me what was possible, for helping me understand what I really wanted. She finally looked at the letter, his withdrawal from the Foundation's campaign. The other letter, his fire department, resignation, lay unsigned on the table. What will you tell them tomorrow? They're expecting a big announcement. Mike smiled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. I'll tell them the truth, that the biggest heroes aren't on stages or magazines. They're in stations and schools and hospitals across the country, just doing their jobs. And that's where I need to be, too. A final siren echoed through the night, and this time Mike didn't fight the urge to respond. He grabbed his gear, kept ready by the door despite weeks of ceremonies and interviews. Want a ride back to your hotel? He asked Alexandra. She shook her head, understanding in her eyes. You have somewhere more important to be. As Mike headed for his truck, the unsigned resignation letter remained on his table, a reminder of the path not taken. The Foundation's contract folder sat beside it, full of promises that would remain unclaimed. But his badge caught the light. As he moved, and in its reflection, he finally recognized himself again. The stack of letters arrived at Station 42 a week after Mike's public decision to stay with the department. Crayon drawings, wobbly handwriting, and earnest words from Ms. Rodriguez's third-grade class filled each page. He read them between calls, each one hitting harder than the last. Dear Mr. Thompson, one began, decorated with a fire truck in red. Crayon, thank you for showing us that real heroes don't need capes. My dad is a janitor at the hospital, and now I know he's a hero too, because he helps people every day. Another featured a stick figure in a firefighter helmet. I wanted to be a YouTube star, but now I want to be a firefighter like you. Mom says, it's dangerous, but you said sometimes being brave means being scared and helping anyway. Jake found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by the letters. Those from the school visit yesterday? Mike nodded. The visit hadn't been planned. He'd just stopped by on his way back from a routine inspection, still in his turnout gear. No cameras, no Foundation representatives, no prepared speeches. Just him and 30 kids with endless questions about what it really meant to help people. You should see what they're saying online, Jake said, pulling up his phone. Your speech at the Foundation event is everywhere. Hero firefighter chooses service over celebrity. You're trending for all the right reasons now. The speech hadn't been what anyone expected. Instead of announcing his retirement and new role, Mike had spoken from the heart about real heroism, about teachers working extra hours, nurses holding patients' hands, volunteers at soup kitchens, about his mother's caregivers and the subway, worker who helped lost children, and the maintenance staff who kept buildings safe. The foundation's reshaping their whole campaign, Jake continued. Alexandra called the captain. They want to feature working first responders, teachers, social workers, people still doing the actual work. No more celebrity ambassadors. Mike picked up another letter, this one featuring a rainbow and a fire hose. My big sister was scared to be a nurse because she's shy. But you said quiet heroes are still heroes, so now she's going to try. Never thought refusing fame would make you more famous, Jake grinned. That's not what matters. Mike gestured to the letters. This is what matters. Real people finding their own kind of courage. The station's alarm system blared to life. Mike moved automatically, but paused to carefully gather the letters into his locker. As they suited up, Jake glanced at him. You really don't regret it? Giving up all that money? Mike adjusted his helmet, thinking of his grandfather's old comment. About cameras and sunsets. The Foundation's still doing good work. They'll find other ways to tell these stories. Better ways. They swung into the truck as Captain Rodriguez called out the details. Kitchen fire. Possible entrapment. Mike's world narrowed to the familiar rhythm of sirens and gear checks, but something had shifted. Not in the work, that remained as vital and immediate as ever. The change was in how he saw it, and how others might see it too. Every call was a chance to show that heroism lived in the doing, not the telling. One last letter had fallen from his locker, stuck to his boot. He grabbed it before climbing into the truck, a simple drawing of a diverse group of people, doctors, teachers, firefighters, parents, all holding hands around the words, "Heroes are everywhere when you know how to look." The truck roared to life, carrying them toward whatever waited ahead. Mike tucked the letter into his jacket, close to his heart. Some voices spoke louder in whispers than shouts. Some heroes shone brighter in shadows than spotlight. And sometimes, the greatest service was simply showing others that they had been heroes all along. The blueprint spread across the station's kitchen table, its blue lines glowing under the fluorescent lights. Station 42 Community Center, read the header, with detailed plans for transforming the abandoned warehouse next door into something new. Training facilities on the ground floor, Mike explained to Alexandra and the Foundation's board members, who sat in their expensive suits on the station's worn chairs. Real-world scenarios for firefighter training, but also community emergency preparedness classes. Captain Rodriguez pointed to another section. Medical training space here. We've got 3 hospitals willing to partner for EMT certification. Their programs, scholarships for low-income students who want to enter emergency services. The smell of Jake's notorious coffee filled the station as Mike turned to the second page. Second floor, after-school programs, senior citizen emergency preparedness, community health screenings. Make it a real hub for the neighborhood. Alexandra studied the plans, her expression thoughtful. This is different from what we initially discussed. The Foundation's original idea was a museum of heroism, Mike finished. I remember. Glass cases full of memorabilia, interactive exhibits about famous rescues. He gestured around the station, but real heroism isn't behind glass. It's alive. It grows. Through the windows they could see neighborhood kids playing basketball. In the station's parking lot, they'd started showing up after Mike's school visit, drawn to the reality behind the headlines. The cost is significantly less than our original project. James Chen's voice came through the conference speaker. But the operational requirements are already handled, Captain Rodriguez interrupted. We've got retired firefighters willing to teach. Nurses from County General volunteering their time. Even the construction unions are offering discounted labor. Mike rolled out the final blueprint page. This isn't about creating a monument to what happened. It's about building something that helps people become their own kind of hero. Alexandra walked to the window, watching the kids outside. One girl wore a plastic firefighter helmet, directing her friends like she was running a rescue operation. "You're not just training future firefighters," she said slowly. "You're building community resilience." "Exactly." Mike joined her at the window. "Every person who learns CPR here, every kid who understands fire safety, every senior citizen who knows what to do in an emergency, they all become part of the safety net. Real heroes, ready when needed." The station's alarm system suddenly blared. Mike and Rodriguez moved automatically, but Mike turned back to the foundation board. "Think about it. This could be a model for other stations, other communities. Not just celebrating heroes, creating them." As the firefighters geared up, Alexandra picked up the blueprint, something like admiration in her eyes. "You never stopped thinking big, did you? You just changed what big meant." Mike adjusted his helmet. "The foundation wanted to tell stories about heroes. This way, we help people write their own stories." Through the opening bay doors, they could see the kids scrambling to clear the basketball hoop, making way for the trucks. They moved with practiced efficiency, already part of the station's rhythm. "The board will need to vote," Alexandra said over the engine's roar. "But Mike, I think you found something better than a spotlight. You found a way to light up others." The trucks pulled out, sirens wailing. In the rearview mirror, Mike saw Alexandra rolling up the blueprints, her phone already at her ear. The Foundation's resources were about to be redirected, not into creating celebrities, but into building something that would last. One of the kids waved as they passed, still wearing her plastic helmet. Mike waved back, remembering his own childhood. Dreams of being a firefighter. Dreams that came true not because someone told him he was special, but because someone showed him how to serve. The blueprint might just be lines on paper now, but he could already see the future it represented. Not a shrine to past heroics, but a forge for future heroes. Not a place to remember what had been done, but a space to learn what could be done. Jake's voice crackled over the radio with their assignment: apartment fire, possible smoke inhalation. The real work called, as it always did. But now each call felt like part of something larger, a thread in a growing web of community, capability, and care. "Ready for this?" Jake asked from the seat beside him. Mike nodded, thinking of the blueprint's promise. Sometimes the biggest changes started not with grand gestures, but with simple plans drawn in blue lines and bold hopes. Sometimes real heroism wasn't about being in the spotlight, but about helping others find their light. "Always ready," he answered, and meant it more than ever. The emergency alert lit up every phone in the station simultaneously. "Major incident. All available units respond. Central High School. Possible explosion and structure fire." Mike's heart stopped for a beat. Central High was hosting the district's science fair today. Hundreds of kids, parents, and teachers would be inside. As if reading his thoughts, the next alert buzzed: "Multiple civilians trapped. Hazmat situation possible." "Thompson," Captain Rodriguez called out. "Channel 7's already. There. They're asking specifically for you." Of course they were. The media hadn't forgotten him, even months after his decision to stay with the department. Every major incident brought them running, hoping for another hero story. "Engine 42, you have command," the radio crackled. "Multiple units en route." Mike grabbed his gear, mind already mapping the school's layout. He'd just done a safety inspection there last week, part of the community center's outreach program. As they roared toward the scene, Jake pulled up the building's schematics on the truck's computer. "Main assembly hall," Mike pointed. "That's where the science fair is, but there's something else." He remembered a detail from his inspection. The chemistry lab renovation. They were storing extra chemicals in the basement. The scene came into view. Smoke pouring from the school's east wing, crowds of evacuated students on the lawn, news vans already setting up their satellite dishes. A reporter spotted their truck and rushed forward with a microphone. "Mike Thompson, America's hero firefighter. What's your plan to—" But Mike was already moving, gathering his team. Jake, take the thermal cameras. Rodriguez, get me contact. With hazmat. The rest of you, full gear, breathing apparatus, check twice. Through the chaos, he spotted Mrs. Chen, the chemistry teacher, waving frantically. "The robotics project," she called out. "It malfunctioned, sparked a reaction. There are still kids in the lab." The media pressed closer, cameras rolling. This was exactly the kind of moment they'd been waiting for. The hero firefighter facing another dramatic rescue. Mike could practically see the headlines forming. But then he remembered something from the community center's emergency training sessions. He turned to the gathered students. "Who's in advanced chemistry?" A dozen hands went up. "What chemicals are stored in the basement?" Specifically, the students called out names and quantities, information that would have taken precious minutes to gather otherwise. Mike nodded to his hazmat officer, who quickly adjusted the response plan. "Thompson," a reporter called out, "can we get a statement about—" "Later," Mike cut them off, but not unkindly. "Right now, I need everyone back behind the safety line. And someone interview these chemistry students. They just saved us crucial time." The first teams were already moving in, armed with the students' information. Mike checked his breathing apparatus one final time, then turned to Jake. "Ready for this?" Jake nodded, looking nervous but determined. "Just like training, right?" "Better." Mike managed a smile. "This time we've got the whole community backing." "Guns up!" They pushed into the smoke-filled building, their path clearer thanks to the students' knowledge. The chemistry lab was on the second floor, but the basement chemicals were the real threat. One wrong move, one spark hitting the wrong substance. Through his radio, Mike could hear the hazmat team securing the basement. The community emergency network they'd built was paying off. Everyone knew their role, moved with purpose instead of panic. They found 3 students and a teacher trapped in the lab's prep room, all conscious thanks to quick thinking with wet cloths over their faces. As they led them out, Mike heard cheers from the crowd, but it wasn't the media attention that struck him this time. It was the chemistry students rushing forward with water and first aid kits, already trained through the community center's programs. It was the school nurse coordinating with EMTs, following protocols they'd practiced together. This wasn't a story about one hero anymore. This was a community that had learned to be its own hero. Later, after the all-clear was given and the investigations begun, a reporter caught up with Mike again. "Another dramatic rescue. How does it feel to be the hero of the hour again?" Mike looked around at his team, at the students who'd provided crucial information, at the emergency response network working seamlessly together. "I'm not the hero," he said simply. "Look around. Heroes are everywhere today. That's what real emergency response looks like. Everyone playing their part, everyone ready to help. That's what we've been training for." The reporter looked disappointed, but Mike didn't care. His phone buzzed with another alert. A text from Alexandra. "Watching the news. This is exactly what we meant by community resilience. Board meeting tomorrow. We're ready to expand the program to 10 more cities." Mike smiled, tucking the phone away. Sometimes the best spotlights were the ones that showed how many heroes were standing beside you all along. The new coffee maker gleamed on Station 42's kitchen counter, its digital display a stark contrast to the old machine's mechanical simplicity. Jake eyed it suspiciously while Mike programmed the settings. "Doesn't feel right," Jake muttered. 20 years of burnt coffee, and now we've got this fancy thing making perfect lattes? Times change, rookie. Mike smiled, remembering when Jake was actually new. Sometimes even for the better. The station house around them was a testament to that. Change. New equipment filled the garage, funded by the Foundation's municipal grant program. The community center next door hummed with activity. EMT classes in the morning, senior safety workshops in the afternoon, youth programs in the evening. Captain Rodriguez walked in, glancing appreciatively at the coffee maker. "First pot of the day ready yet?" "Board meeting in 10 minutes. Just finishing up." Mike started 3 cups brewing. "How many coming?" Full house. Foundation quarterly review, plus reps from the other cities starting their own programs. Rodriguez checked his tablet. Alexandra's running late. Some issue with the Nashville location. The coffee maker chimed softly, producing 3 perfect cups. No burnt taste, no grounds floating on top. Progress, Mike thought, didn't always mean losing what mattered. They carried their coffee to the station's newly renovated conference room, where the old scratch table had been replaced by one that could actually accommodate their growing team. The walls displayed a mix of traditional firefighting memorabilia and photos of community programs in action. Quarterly numbers are strong, Rodriguez began as the room filled. Emergency response times down 12% across all participating districts. Community involvement up 60%. Training program graduation rates at 89%. Mike sipped his coffee, letting the familiar rhythm of the meeting wash over him. 6 months ago, he'd worried that accepting the Foundation's revised support would change everything. Instead, it had simply amplified what was already working. The door opened, and Alexandra hurried in, looking harried but happy. "Sorry I'm late. Nashville situation handled," and she placed a newspaper on the table with a flourish. "You might want to see this." The headline read, "Community Hero Program Goes National. Congress Considers Funding Expansion." Page 3. "Is better," Alexandra said, flipping to a photo spread. Mike saw himself in the background of the first photo, helping at a training session. But the focus was on the trainees, a diverse group of community members learning emergency response skills. The next photos showed similar scenes from other cities, ordinary people becoming extraordinary when needed. "That's how you tell a hero story," Jake said softly. A familiar alarm tone cut through the meeting. Not the station's emergency signal, but the community alert system they'd developed. Everyone's phones buzzed simultaneously. "Apartment complex on Cedar," Mike read. "Water main break, flooding in the senior units." The response was immediate and coordinated. Jake pulled up the building's resident list. They had it on file from their senior safety program. Rodriguez contacted the water department using their direct line. The community emergency network activated, with trained volunteers already heading to assist. "This is what we actually wanted all along," Alexandra said, watching the smooth operation unfold. Not just one hero in the spotlight, but a whole community of people ready to help. Mike stood, reaching for his gear. Some things hadn't changed. He still responded to calls, still did the hands-on work. But now each response was supported by layers of preparation and community involvement. "Meeting adjourned?" he asked with a smile. Rodriguez nodded. "Go. Show them how it's done." As Mike headed for the truck, he passed the old coffee maker, now retired to a place of honor on a shelf. Beside it sat the broken trophy from his crisis of fame, deliberately left unrepaired. And next to that, a framed copy of the withdrawal letter he'd written to the Foundation months ago, the letter that had led not to an ending, but to a new beginning. The new coffee maker hummed in the background, making another perfect pot for whatever came next. Like the station itself, it represented the balance they'd found, embracing progress without losing heart, accepting help without sacrificing authenticity. "Thompson," Jake called from the truck. "You coming or what?" Mike grinned, heading out. Real heroism, he'd learned, wasn't about choosing between tradition and progress. It was about finding ways to make both work together, creating something stronger than either could be alone. The truck rolled out into the morning sun, its new equipment gleaming alongside its battle-tested parts. Inside his jacket pocket, Mike carried a letter from one of their first community program graduates, now a full-fledged EMT. The letter said simply, "Thank you for showing us that being a hero isn't about being famous. It's about being ready." That, Mike thought, as they raced toward another chance to help, was worth more than all the spotlights in the world. The new Chen Foundation logo caught the morning light as Mike walked past it on his way into the national conference. Gone was the stylized singular hero figure, replaced by a circle of interconnected hands forming a safety net. Below it, the words, "Every community, every hero," spoke to how far they'd come from the original celebrity-focused campaign. Inside the convention center, representatives from 200 cities filled the main hall. Fire chiefs, teachers, nurses, social workers, community organizers, all here to learn about what the media had dubbed the Station 42 model. "Ready for your speech?" Alexandra appeared beside him, tablet in hand. She'd traded her designer suits for more practical business wear, another sign of how things had evolved. "You know, I still hate public speaking," Mike replied, adjusting his dress uniform. "That's exactly why they want to hear from you," she smiled. "The reluctant hero who changed how we think about heroism itself." The presentation screens showed real-time updates from community programs across the country, emergency response statistics, training graduation rates, lives saved through improved preparation. One screen displayed a live feed of Station 42's morning drill, where Jake was leading a diverse group of trainees through search and rescue basics. 2 years, Alexandra mused, watching the feed. Sometimes I can hardly believe how much has changed since that fire. Mike thought back to the warehouse where he'd found her, to the choices that followed. Changed, but stayed the same too. The work is still the work. A group of teenagers walked past, wearing T-shirts from the Youth Emergency Response Program, one of the Foundation's most successful initiatives. They weren't dreaming of social media fame anymore. They were learning real skills, becoming genuine assets to their communities. James Chen stepped onto the stage, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Welcome to the 2nd Annual Community Heroes Conference," he began. 2 years ago, we thought we knew what heroism looked like. We thought it was about individual achievements, dramatic moments, inspiring stories. We were wrong. The screens shifted to show news footage. A Florida retirement community evacuating safely during a hurricane, guided by senior citizens they'd trained as emergency coordinators. A Chicago school where students had prevented a chemical accident using protocols learned from the program. A rural Montana town where a network of trained volunteers had saved lives during a massive blizzard. "The Station 42 model works," James continued, "because it recognizes that true heroism isn't about waiting for someone to save us. It's about building communities that know how to save themselves." Mike felt Alexandra squeeze his arm as James gestured toward him. "And none of this would have happened if one firefighter hadn't had the courage to tell us we were thinking too small." Please welcome Mike Thompson, the man who showed us that the best way to celebrate heroes is to create more of them. The applause was thunderous, but Mike barely heard it. His attention was caught by the live feed from Station 42, where he could see his mother visiting the community center. Her good days were more frequent now, helped by the sense of purpose she'd found teaching other seniors about emergency preparedness. The nurses said having a role, a way to help others, had slowed her decline. At the podium, Mike looked out at the sea of faces. Not celebrities or politicians, but real people doing real work in their communities. He touched the speech cards in his pocket, then set them aside. 2 years ago, he began, I was offered a chance to become a symbol, to step away from active service and inspire others from a safe distance. I almost said yes. The audience quieted, listening. But here's what I've learned since then. Inspiration without action is just entertainment. Real change happens when we stop telling people about heroes and start showing them how to be heroic themselves. The screens behind him filled with more images. Kids learning CPR, elderly neighbors creating phone trees for emergencies, ordinary citizens becoming extraordinary through knowledge and preparation. The foundation asked me to be a face for their campaign. Instead, we became a mirror, reflecting the potential in every community, every person. That's not my achievement. That's all of you. choosing to do the work instead of just talking about it. He gestured to the new logo above the stage. Every hand in that circle represents someone who stepped up, someone who learned, someone who decided that their community deserved more than waiting for a hero to arrive. A notification buzzed. Through the hall, the community alert system they'd developed, now used nationwide. Minor flooding in a Denver suburb. On the screens, they watched the local response network activate. Trained citizens moving to help neighbors, coordinating with emergency services, implementing practiced protocols. That, Mike said simply, is what heroism really looks like. Not one person in the spotlight, but an entire community shining together. The Foundation's new logo seemed to pulse with life above him, each hand in the circle representing countless lives touched, changed, empowered. Not through fame or fortune, but through the simple, profound act of teaching others how to help. In his locker at Station 42, Mike's old helmet sat beside his new one. The old one bore every scar of his 20 years of service. Burns, scratches, the deep groove from that warehouse fire that had changed everything. The new one gleamed with modern safety features and a fresh coat of paint, but it was already collecting its own stories. "Still keeping both, huh?" Jake asked, now a lieutenant himself and running B shift with the same dedication Mike had shown him years ago. "Some things you don't let go of," Mike replied, running his hand over the old helmet's familiar surface. "They remind you where you came from." The station hummed with its new normal. Through the windows, he could see the community center busy with its daily activities. His mother was there today, having one of her good days, teaching a group of seniors about emergency preparedness. The doctors said staying involved, having purpose, had done more for her than any medicine. 5 years, Jake mused, leaning against the lockers. Hard to believe how much has changed since that fire. Mike nodded, thinking of Alexandra's rescue, the fame that followed, the choices that had led them here. The Foundation's program had spread to over 500 cities now. The Station 42 model had become a template for community resilience worldwide. The familiar alarm tone sounded, a routine call, nothing major. As Mike reached for his gear, his hand hesitated between the two helmets for just a moment before grabbing the new one. The old helmet had earned its rest, had done its duty. Like his grandfather's stories, it served now as a reminder rather than a tool. "You know what I realized?" Mike said as they swung into the truck. "Every time we answer a call now, we're not just responding to an emergency. We're showing another generation what real service looks like." Through the streets they'd protected for so long, Mike saw the changes their work had created. Urgency. Preparation posters in shop windows, community response team stickers on doors. People who waved, not because he was famous, but because they'd trained together, worked together, built something together. His phones, he still kept both, stayed quiet in his pocket. The media circus had moved on long ago, finding new stories to tell. But the real story, the one that mattered, was written in the faces of every trained volunteer, every prepared community, every life made safer through shared knowledge and commitment. The call turned out to be simple, a minor electrical fire, already contained by the building's safety officer, a graduate of their training program. As they packed up their gear, Mike caught his reflection in a window. The new helmet sat naturally now, its weight familiar but different from the old one. Like everything else, it represented not a replacement of the past, but an evolution of it. Back at the station, he took a moment to touch the old helmet one last time before closing his locker. Its scratches and scars had taught him everything he needed to know about real heroism. That it wasn't about fame or recognition, but about showing up, doing the work, and helping others learn to do the same. The new helmet would collect its own stories, its own lessons. But thanks to what they'd built together, the Foundation, the community, the next generation of everyday heroes, those stories would be about more than just one firefighter doing his job. They would be about entire communities learning to be their own kind of hero, one helping hand at a time, and that, Mike thought as he headed out for his next call, was the greatest story of all.